Build creative confidence. Beat the inspiration addiction. Join the Writer's Gym. Today on the Writer's Gym, we are joined by Tim Lebbon, New York Times-bestselling writer from South Wales, who has written over 50 novels, as well as hundreds of novellas and short stories. His latest novel is Secret Lives of the Dead. He has won a World Fantasy Award, 4 British Fantasy Awards, a Dragon Award and a Scribe Award. His novel The Silence is a movie on Netflix starring Stanley Tucci. The movie of his novella Pay the Ghost stars Nicolas Cage. Tim has written extensively in existing universes, including Alien, Conan the Barbarian, Star Wars, Firefly and Hellboy novels. He's also novelized the movies 30 Days of Night, The Cabin in the Woods and Kong Skull Island. Tim has written computer games, comics and audio dramas. He's currently developing more novels and both original and adapted screen projects. He loves the outdoors and spends a lot of time walking, running, cycling and swimming around the Welsh countryside. And as writers, we all will also be discussing the time he spends in coffee shops. He's competed in many Ironman events and other triathlons. He's a huge music fan and believes you're never too old to jump up and down in a mosh pit. And what I took from this interview, and I'm pretty sure you will too, is how the more you do of what you love, the more, yes, it's hard work, but it's hard work in a really, really good way. And I love hearing Tim talk about how writing remains hard. And if it's not hard, maybe he's doubting the process a bit, but that joy is, if anything, greater for the fact that we put so much of ourselves into it. Hello, Tim.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Really good, thank you. It is
Good.
So lovely to see you. Of all the bios I've ever read out, I think I've just got such, I can feel the joy in yours, and the fact that it ends like all of the brownie points for believes you're never too old to jump up and down in a mosh pit. That it's
absolutely.
all about doing what you love, isn't it?
God, yeah. I mean, the mosh pit thing is a recent thing I added because I went to see Idols with my family. I'm a massive Idols fan, and they dragged me into the mosh pit, and I had such a good time. Well, honestly, I dragged a couple of them into the mosh pit as well. So, yeah, never too old.
And mutual dragging into where you
Yes.
probably all at some level want to be.
Yeah. I came out covered in beer and sweat and blood, but it was my blood, so it was okay. I was hit by a full plastic of beer on the head, and it just cut my head a little bit.
Oh, wow.
It was part of the fun.
Yeah. My grandmother would have called that an honourable scar. Admittedly, she was
absolutely.
talking about cooking rather than
Moshing.
rather than moshing. But you were doing what you wanted to do and you got the scar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is kind of feels very relevant to me, because I think the first conversation I ever had with you, despite the fact that we were at a horror convention and we are both in the horror writers community,
Right.
was not about horror writing. It was about Iron Man, and it was about triathlons. I think my question was something along the lines of, oh my God, why? But you love it, don't you?
I do love it, but I ask myself that question every time I'm doing something like that. I did a little race a week ago yesterday, actually, in North Wales. It was a shorter triathlon.
What counts to you as little in this context?
It was a 3-hour race. So it was about a 1,200 meter swim and then a 40k bike and a 10k run. So it was just under 3 hours. And I raced with my friend, Mike, who's my training partner, and he went off in a later wave than me. So they set you off in waves, and we finished to the second at the exact time. It was amazing. Yeah. So even a race like that, which is shorter than I'm used to doing, sort of settling in for the day and doing a 15-hour race where you just take it easy. But because this one was really short, you really went, red lined it all the way. So it was exhausting. Actually, I'd be more knackered from that than I have any Ironmans I've done, I think.
I don't know if I'm reading a parallel into this, but I was reading a quote from one of your recent interviews, and you said, I find writing hard. Writing a novel is always a challenge. If I'm finding it easy, I start doubting the process. And This seems like a work ethic overall in the fun.
I guess it's a work ethic. It's also just that I find writing, it's work. I call it work. I've been a professional writer for 20 years now. And even before then, I'd probably say to my wife, I'm going to go and do some writing now. But now I just say I'm going to work. And I come in my office here or a cabin in the garden and get going. I do find it hard. It's very rare I sit down for a morning and write for 3 or 4 hours and find it easy and get up and think that was a good day's work. But usually I'm beating myself up about not doing enough or thinking it's not good enough. It's a real process for me. Everyone's got a different process. I know that. And that's part of the joy. But occasionally I've met people who, oh, right, I love writing. It's easy. And I'm suspicious of them.
And it's also, there's different versions of what love can mean and what love can feel like, I think.
Right. Yeah. There's that famous quote. I think Ramsey came up with it, or it might have been Ramsey. I hate writing, but love having written.
So Ramsey Campbell's wonderful horror writer as well. Yeah. There is something in that, because I think one of the comments I get most about doing these podcasts, and the reason this podcast is here, was predominantly from my members, who many of them are published, but many of them are not, and realizing that everybody has to find their own system. Yeah. And I think maybe best of all, everybody has those voices in their heads that are creative in one way, but using that same software for the anxiety of, how would somebody else be doing this? What does it mean that I haven't done that? And blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and
right.
when you are, a best-selling novelist, you've got A-listers in your films, you're doing, we've got all of this happening.
Yeah.
The feelings are still there, aren't they?
Oh, totally. Yeah. The feelings of self-doubt, and especially, halfway through any novel that I'm writing, I'm filled with doubt about whether it's any good, whether it's going to work. And I've come to embrace that, really. If I'm working on something and it feels like it's going too smoothly, I'll question it a little bit. But self-doubt, most writers I speak to, bestsellers, whatever, will in private tell you they're full of self-doubt and worry that it's all going to go away.
Can I ask you about when you said if it was going too easily, maybe an example, or what does that feel like? What is too easily?
I guess if it feels that you're not working hard to get where you want to get, maybe. I'm more of a pantser than a planner, so I'm forever writing myself into corners. And I quite like when that happens, because I have to work my way out of the corners then. And it sort of feels more like real life. Your characters in your novel get into a place where they don't know what to do or don't know how to get out of it. So you have to sort of give them the tools and invite them to edge their own way out of it, as it were. And it's the same as real life, really.
Yeah, it's a good sign for people that if we come to a problem or if we come to a roadblock, it doesn't mean we as writers have actually necessarily done something wrong. It's just like everything else in life. Yeah. You got to find your way.
Right. Yeah. And I say I'm a pantser. I make notes about a novel before I start. But generally, if I write a proposal for a novel, it goes in the drawer and then I don't look at it again. Or very rarely anyway. And then I start writing the novel, then it becomes what it was meant to be, really.
And does that give it more breathing space to become something else if it diverts from the plan?
Yeah, I think so. And the plan's always, it's literally a plan. It's not your novel. It's not even the story you want to tell. Often I'll write proposals to show to publishers. And if, sometimes happens that you'll write a proposal and publisher will buy it and then you go and write the novel. And if that happens, they rarely get the novel that the proposal told them they were going to get. And it's never, I'm not saying it's totally different, but it's always going to veer off the path, because for me, I'm still thinking, obviously thinking of the story when I'm writing. So I haven't got it all pinned down before I even start writing the novel. For me, the story's being created as I work my way through. So much so that when I get to the last couple of chapters, I speed up writing because I want to know what happens at the end.
That's such a nice feeling. I want to know what happens.
Yeah. I usually have a rough idea, but when you get into the end of a story, I don't think you're ever really totally certain of how it's going to end, who's going to live, who's going to die, Do you find that either some stories or some formats divert more from what you planned than others? 'Cause I'm thinking sometimes I know because you've obviously adapted as well, and that's a very different way of looking at things, because you do up to a point. Yes, you can change if you need to for some reason, but you do know what's going to happen. Have you found that prose is more likely to make its own way than screen, or is there anything like that for you? Yeah, I'll always consider myself a novelist. I've done screenplays and audio dramas and comics and stuff.
But the center ring of the tree is novels.
Is novel, right? Yeah, short stories and novel. I cut my teeth on short stories back in small press days in the 90s, 80s and 90s. Yeah, show my age now. But yeah, at heart, I'm a novelist. And yeah. To your question, I think prose probably has more of a chance to expand than any other media for me. Especially, if I'm adapting something of my own, the story's essentially there, although, the screenplay is never going to be the same as the novel. I'm working on something just today, actually. I'm adapting a novel I wrote 10, 12 years ago called The Hunt, which is a thriller. it's gone through multiple iterations because my screen manager is a really creative guy and he gives it a lot of input. I'm very lucky to have him. It's not someone I give a script and say, right, go and sell this. I give the script and he says, right, let's think about this. So I'm in draft 8 or 9 now, maybe. And it changes subtly every draft.
And that's such a beautiful position to be in when you've got somebody that you have that trust and respect.
Yeah.
And a common objective, a common goal. You see it evolving together.
Yeah, it's why I love collaborating. I mean, I regard Michael as a collaborator. I'm doing the writing, but he's doing a lot of the spitballing with me and the coming up with story ideas and things. I suppose the lack of confidence sometimes is why I love collaborating so much, because if you've got, especially on novels, if you've got a collaborator working with you, then, you're getting your ideas past them as well as past yourself. I mean, I'm great friends with Chris Golden. He and I have written 8 or 9 novels together now, and short stories and screenplays. And Chris is great for collaborating with. He's a story mine. He'll sit there. What about this? What about this? What about this? And he'll come out with loads of ideas that would have taken me weeks of sitting there staring into the abyss. So for me, collaborating is having that quality control the instant the thought gets out of your head onto the page. And it feels like that with Michael working on the screenplay. I'll go away and spend a week or 2 writing the next draft and then go back to him. And then we go through the same process and get into a stage where we're both happy with it and we're ready to show a director. But it takes a while.
Once it gets to the point where you're ready to show the director, does a bit more of the same thing happen if the director's got queries, or is that part of the equation?
Yeah, that'll happen. Yeah. I mean, we've got a director interested in this and he's seen a draft and came back with some ideas. So I've sort of incorporated them, and then in doing so, sort of found other areas where we could hopefully improve. It's so different from writing a novel, especially writing a novel solo. I'll come up with the idea, write a novel. That makes it sound so easy, doesn't it? I'll just write a novel, send it to a publisher, and you get edited. A couple of drafts later, it's ready to go. But screenplays are never-ending projects. I don't think a screenplay's ever finished. It's just put aside and you move on to the next one.
Do you not feel that at all about novels?
Oh, yeah, I do sometimes. Yeah. I think I've said a few times, I don't think any story you're trying to tell is ever really finished. It's just reaches the deadline or it gets to the stage where you're happy with it. I mean, I don't revisit my stuff much. I don't reread. Because by the time, my new book's out now, but I'm not going to pick it up and read it again because I've read it 78,000 times already. So.
But will there be a time in 10? I mean, do you look back at things from longer ago and say hi again, or is it not like that?
Oh, yeah. Only in that way where you look on the shelf and see books and think, oh shit, that was really good and nobody read it. Those depressing moments sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I've been in book charts, but it's generally for tie-in stuff I've done. My own books are generally not really bestsellers. They sell okay, and I've got readership and it's great, and I'm really lucky to do what I do. But just occasionally there's a book which just doesn't sell as well as others. And I think, oh, that's such a good book. I really wish more people had read it. So I suppose I don't really revisit the story as such, rather than revisit the moment in time when it came out and thinking, what else could I have done to push it?
And possibly our subconscious are doing that anyway, because anything where there's still further to go, it's probably in there being made into something new, going to have another go, even if we never know it's happening.
Yeah. And, that filters into other stories as well, as I think. Yeah. So having stuff republished is sort of a opportunity, I guess, but I've not really been tempted by that yet.
Something that crossed my mind when you were talking about that process with collaborators, and then obviously the director is a collaborator too, but different levels of collaboration or different orders of collaboration. And a couple of things that I was wondering about, certainly for some of the newer writers that I work with, when they're new to the concept of editing, which is a collaboration in itself.
Yeah.
I've had some people be very nervous to start that, and either of itself, or I think also about how we find our levels of pushback. And I wonder what, when you talked about having, done this for 20 years and looking back at how confidence changes, things like that, what's it been like for you in terms of knowing when it's something to push back on or not?
You mean getting editorial feedback from publishers or from editors, yeah?
With feedback and I guess with collaboration. I know they're very different things.
So with collaboration, I'll sort of talk about that first, because I think that's the easier part of those equations. So I collaborate with quite a few people. Chris is my American brother and I collaborate with him all the time. And from the very first book, we really trusted each other, trusted obviously we like each other's writing, good friends, so you can push back if something's not working. You can't be precious about your work when you're collaborating with somebody. You can be confident about it. If I write something and Chris comes back and says, yeah, this is good, I've just changed this, I've cut this line because it wasn't working. It's very rare I'll go back in and say, no, put it back in. It's an organic process. And the great thing about collaborating on your writing as opposed to editorial process is I find we come up with something neither of us would have written. So it's like we're creating a third voice, a different voice, So the very first novel we wrote was called Mind the Gap. And my agent, who's now Chris's agent, Howard Moorheim in New York, he read it and he said, oh, Tim, it's terrific. You wrote the first chapter, right? I said, no, Chris did. It might have been the other way around. My memory's not so good, but that was a long time ago. Chris would agree our styles aren't identical. They're not even very, very similar. We've got fairly different writing styles. But I think writing with a good friend who you trust, you're allowing your voice to be changed by their voice. So I always say when we're editing a collaborative thing, I Lebbonize his goldenisms and he goldenizes my Lebbonism, which is a bit of a tongue twister, but we come up with a whole third voice, To editing though, I've worked with some really great editors, and best editors will say to you, here's my edit note, here's the manuscript marked up. And they'll say, as always, this is a suggestion. If you disagree with anything, come back and we'll talk about it. But all the best editors make a book better, I think. Yeah. And it is a discussion. It's not a list of orders. Generally, the good stuff, they'll be right about a lot of stuff. And just occasionally some stuff I'll chat to them about and they'll say, oh yeah, fair enough, we'll keep that in.
So it's a case of know your objective, know the thing you're both working towards.
Yeah.
So maybe clarification is a better way of looking at it than pushback in a way.
Yeah. And trusting an editor is pretty vital, I think, because you're trusting with your baby. You've written this thing. And by the time you finish writing a novel and you submit it to an independent editor or to a publisher for your editor there to edit it, you're so close to it as a project that you can't see the errors in it. It's like reading a sentence with a misspelled word. If you keep reading it, you miss the misspelled word. And it's like in a novel, I've missed plot holes, bloody ridiculous plot holes in my novels because in my head it's all working. And you've read it again and again and again. And in your head, the effect you're trying to have, but you may have misrepresented it on the page.
There's the feeling that I get that sometimes if I've read it too frequently or if I've been with it too long, there's a part of my brain that now considers a certain order of events as fact and therefore isn't criticising it in the same way and therefore doesn't spot the plot holes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you think you know the story you've told. And it's usually really small stuff, but that's... An editor reads it for the first time and it's absolutely fresh.
And they see it blaring out because it's fresh.
Yeah. They see all the errors. Yeah, all the mess ups. You envisage something as you read something as you think you've written it. And sometimes you haven't quite written it that way.
And that's where an editor or a collaborator is brilliant because, again, we're allowing it to be itself. You mentioned earlier about how over 20 years... the experience can change a bit. And you said about how now, if it's coming too easily, there's a sort of suspicion around that. Am I being too smooth with that?
No, yeah, I've always felt that though.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Even way back when it was new?
Yeah, I think so.
Ooh.
I mean, it's 28 years this year. My first novel was published. I've been doing it full time for either 19 or 20 years this year. I've lost count. Back when I was like mid to late 20s, writing short stories for the little magazines and indie publishers. I guess there was that massive youthful enthusiasm, which drove you to write a huge amount of stuff, probably without having such a mind to quality control. I'm not saying the stuff I wrote back then wasn't very good because I do, occasionally I'll think about my first novel, Mesmer, and I actually do think it's pretty good, But yeah, even back then I didn't find writing easy. So I've compared writing a novel to racing an Ironman. It's not easy. You start off all enthusiastic in the beginning of the novel and you're in the water at the start of the swim. You start off at a sprint and all the adrenaline's flooding. And then halfway through the 112-mile bike ride, you're thinking, this is the middle of the novel. What am I doing? Not only do I do this for fun, but I paid someone to let me do it. In the case of an Ironman, never paid to be published though.
Yeah, agreed. Do you want to maybe expand on that just in case there's anyone out there who has not been near me on a soapbox?
They call it vanity publishing, don't they? When companies prey on people who are trying to either make a living writing or just trying to get in with publishers. If you're offered, we'll publish your novel and all you've got to pay for is the cover art, which is £2,000. Don't do it because they've made their profit then. They'll ship 10 boxes of books to your house and then that's it. It's down to you. anything worth publishing, you'll find someone to publish it eventually.
And also, and you're such a lovely, lovely example of this, the collaboration aspect, even when you're a solo author, the collaboration aspect is still such a joy. Like my second collection of short stories that's behind my head right now. So anybody watching us on YouTube in the future, do you know what I'm going to say? Because
get it out and see it.
The image that Steve Shaw at Black Shark Books did for that,
brilliant.
I just think is so beautiful. That only happened because I'd found a publisher who liked and was interested in what I was doing. And the thing is, if you come in as a customer rather than as a collaborator, you don't get to improve your writing. You don't get to create those relationships, and you're selling yourself short.
Yeah.
So, you know, they call it vanity. And then I think, you won't get the same ego boost that you will get from somebody else going along with you and loving it with you.
No, right. You'll get a book so-called published. You'll get a book delivered to your door that's print on demand, which nowadays looks great generally. So it'll look great, and you'll be able to show your, family and friends that you've got a book published, but you pay to have a book published. So not only is people preying on your desire to see your stuff in print, not only that, but in a way, it's more of an achievement getting something published when you've gone through the process of submitting, being rejected, learning from rejection. Still get loads of rejections now. If I'm sending a novel out there, my agent will send it to 15 publishers, and I'll get a bunch of rejections. And it's all character building and all part of the process.
It is important for us, I think, to say again at every stage that human emotions stay as human emotions. The phenomenal success that you have had does not mean that you're not going to feel, when, something doesn't land where you'd exactly want it to land.
All the time. And I think your emotions about your level of success change with the level of success. I know writers who are getting high 6-figure deals, and they'll say to me over a beer, but it might all go away next year. What happens? What if the next book bombs and it's crap and nobody likes it? I wouldn't say I have crippling self-doubt, but I'm always, oh God, I don't know, this isn't doing very good. My new book out now, Secret Lives of the Dead, is out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever. And I look at the Amazon rankings now and I'm thinking, it's just nobody's buying it. But they are, because people are talking about it online and emailing me.
People are talking about it everywhere.
Yeah. And it's not all about Amazon. Amazon's the one place where you can sort of easily check sales rankings.
Bit too easily. It's very easy to Google.
It's too easy to do. Yeah. The self-doubt, I think, keeps your feet on the ground a little bit. So occasionally I'll have a chat with my manager who's in LA. That sounds really wanky. My LA manager. Yeah. Have a little chat about submitting the new script.
That's the best self-doubt quote ever.
Yeah, it's a little wanky. But to keep your feet on the ground, after that, I always go out and pick up after my dog. So I've just been talking to my LA manager. Now I'm picking up dog turds, and it keeps your feet on the ground. Mentally, my feet are pretty much on, I'm quite rooted, I think.
Jazz singer friend said to me recently, she was on the phone to somebody she'd met through her work who'd been at one of her gigs, and this new friend. So what are you up to at the moment? She said, I'm just taking the washing out. And I can't imagine you doing that.
Yeah, right.
As if, once you're doing this glamorous thing, you no longer have to run the washing machine.
Yeah, right. We're just normal people. It's a job. Writing's a job. Absolutely a job. Very underpaid at times. So there's always this. I do reflect quite a bit on my career. This is something else Chris told me. Chris, like I said, he's only a couple of years older than me, but he's a very wise older brother figure when it comes to the work, the writing and stuff. Chris has been through it all. People say I've had a lot of novels published. Chris is well over 100 now. I'm on about 53, I think. I'm a slacker. So we did a thing a few years ago where Frank Turner, he's a folk punk rock singer. He's got a massive following, but you won't find him on, the Chris Evans show on Virgin or anything like that, because he's sort of underground, but big following, big enough to open at the 2012 Olympics, And apparently before he went on stage, the stage director said, right, there's 1 billion people watching. He was like, what? So this is a real roundabout way of telling you what Chris said to me about appreciating what you've done at whatever level you are. So I'll cut a long story short. I'm not known for doing that. So Frank had a song called Mittens, and I'll try and remember the lyrics. And it was, I wandered lonely in the snow streets of New York. I came upon a thrift store that sold postcards by the yard. I bought a mile and shipped them home so I could read 10,000 10-word tragedies, the lives these people lead. And it's such a cool lyric. I said to Chris, that's a great idea for an anthology based on postcards, strangers' postcards. So I emailed Frank and said, "Can we do an anthology based on this lyric?" He said, "Sure, I'll send you the postcards." And so he did actually buy a box of postcards at this thrift store in New York.
Wow.
So he sent us this box of postcards. We chose a load of great writers, sent them a couple of postcards each, had the anthology published by PS Publishing. Frank wrote his first piece of prose for the book. And then I was chatting to Chris. I said, "Wouldn't it be great if Frank could do a launch event for us?" He said, "There's no fucking way he'll do that." So I emailed him. He said, "Yeah, sure. You find me a venue." So I became a rock promoter, a concert promoter for one summer, which is way more stressful than I ever thought it would be. It's really hard work. So Frank came to this pub in London called the Lexington, which is actually quite a well-known venue. Yeah. And he played the launch for us for free, played 10 songs, signed all the books there. And Chris happened to be over. He was guest at Edgelit a week before that. And then we timed the launch with Edgelit. And Chris has done a lot of stuff. He's toured the UK back in the day when he's writing Buffy novels and stuff. He said, "Look, step back and absorb everything that's happening here. Don't just get swept up in it." Because it was an amazing night. He's literally my favorite punk rock singer, playing a gig for us. It was amazing. And Chris was right, so step back and absorb it. And I try and do that more now. Every little success, have a short story accepted for an anthology. I still get really excited to see the email. "Yeah, we loved your story. We'll take it." And I've had quite a few published in anthologies now. Something like, the recent Stand anthology, The End of the World as We Know It, which is based on Stephen King's novel, The Stand, obviously. Big anthology, 35 writers, and I was lucky enough to get a story in there. So I'm fully absorbing the excitement of that book coming out and people's reaction to it. Because it's a career highlight, it's my favorite novel. God, I'm waffling on now. So
no, it's beautiful. Honestly, it's so beautiful because I cannot tell you how much it means to hear people who are doing the thing, reminding themselves to enjoy it. That, the way I sometimes describe it as the 14-year-old in your head working the controls. Let them have their moment. But also, as you say, acknowledge it never stops being hard work.
Right.
And we don't want it to stop being hard work. I do hear that in how much you enjoy the Iron Man stuff as well, that the journey is every bit as big as the destination, if not more so. And
Absolutely.
There isn't a destination anyway in the case of writing. You're always progressing.
It's always an ongoing destination. It's the next deadline, the next book release. But it's an interesting career. My UK agent, Caspian, I had a beer with him after the End of the World as We Know It launch in London a couple of weeks ago. And he said he thinks it's a career that keeps people youthful in their mind because you're always looking just a little bit to the future for the next book publication, the next anthology submission, or the potential next exciting thing that might land in your inbox. I'm always waiting for exciting news about stuff that 9 times out of 10 doesn't land. There's always this potential film thing or screen thing or, stuff like that. So it is. And also there's always a point in the middle of an Ironman where I say to myself, I'm doing this for fun, and remind myself, God, look where I am. I'm in Snowdonia, cycling around Snowdonia, racing with friends. And you pay for the privilege, but it's something that you love doing. Yeah. And it's quite important to remind yourself in the pits of despair about how shit your next chapter is, that you're actually, you're making up stuff out of your head to potentially sell. That's an amazing thing, really.
It is an amazing thing. And actually, another thing I noticed with that is the amazingness, even when you're sort of surrounded by the fact that you do know that authors are people and everybody's just a human trying their best. I was reading one of yours when you emailed me, and it was this, there was just this little minute of, what? Oh, and it's just, I've had that every so often where it just sort of something reminds you that it's happening, and that whether it's your first short story submission or whether you've got, how many was it? 53
novels, I think, or 54. Yeah. I've sort of lost count. Yeah.
And I'm summarizing because obviously there's all the films and there's everything else. But wherever one is keeping that joy, that excitement. So life art boundaries, Tim.
Right.
It's different for everybody. But giving you an example, I take over the living room. The living room is my den and office during the day. And when the door is closed, the door is closed. And my partner knows Rachel's writing, or he knows if I'm on Zoom because I tell him I'm recording or whatever I'm doing. There's a clarity to that. You mentioned you have a dog. I know you also have humans.
I do, yeah. He's down there now, my puppy.
Oh,
yeah.
He's very welcome to join if he would like to.
Don't know if we'll be able to.
Go on, push out ratings.
You can just see his bum. He's asleep. And honestly, I don't really want to wake him up. He's lovely. He's 6 months old. If I woke him up, he'd probably be good, but he'd want to know. And he's a Labrador, so he's actually too big for me to pick up. and he's sleeping quietly. So yeah.
I've now seen a cute animal with the result that my brain has gone to muck and can't remember the question.
Right.
But the question was along the lines of art, life, boundaries. What have you evolved that works for you so that you have your space and time? What's been good for you?
It sort of changes quite often, actually. Not quick changes, but it's like a organic process. So I've always pretty much 9 to 5 writing, and that's left over from when I used to work for a living. I still work for, you know what I mean?
Now I just work harder.
Yeah.
I enjoy it more.
Well, enjoy the work now. It's left over from when I worked for the man. And I think that's a healthy thing to try and have an established time. But at the moment, for instance, my wife works 8 till 1 and then 2 till 4. So 8 till 1 is great. It's like a good lump of time in the morning that I can write. And then she's home for lunch every day, which is great. But it means I stop work. And then she's gone at 2. I try and get back into it. And then she's home at 4. So my main writing time at the moment is in the mornings. And I'm sort of better earlier. I haven't written in the evening for a long time. I do Zooms, I do meetings and you know, emails and admin and social media crap and all that. But my main writing time is the morning, really.
Can I just get excited about that for a moment, please? Because you're a morning brain for writing. And are you good at ignoring the emails until the afternoon or turning it off until the...
No, it's like, no, I get on, check any emails, check the social media in the mornings. And then, so Tracy goes to work just before 8. And then I usually really try and sit down at 9 to start writing.
So you've got a landing pattern.
Dog. Yeah, pretty much. It's not strict. You know, I got to walk the puppy. So my son's living at home as well now. He graduated uni. He graduated uni about a couple of months ago. So he's having a bit of time out. He's going to travel soon. Well, early next year, he's going to Costa Rica for a month, I think, which is amazing. So he's home. Dan's home. We've got a smallish 3-bed semi. So if I am not here alone, I do find it harder, I must admit. And my family know that, and it's not their fault, it's my fault. It's just, we've got a smallish garden, but we've got a cabin office out there.
I have to say, for nerd reasons, I did love it hearing you say a cabin in the garden. Like, that you're the only person who's phrased their shed like that. And I'm thinking, is that because you adapted it?
It's partly to do. So it was almost a shed. And then we decided, because we knocked the garage down to build this structure. And it was going to be a wooden shed. And then my mate building it said, don't you want it insulated? And we said, oh, yeah, all right, then it'll be a bit more money. And it's like another room. It's wonderful out there. You can work there in the winter with a heater in there. So if we just had a shed built, we'd call it a shed, but it costs too much to call it a shed. So we call it a cabin. Anyway, yeah. So it's like, it's sort of an office. It's also, all my bikes are in there. I say all my 3 bikes are in there. And there's a weights thing, there's a tumble dryer, but there's a desk. So my wife worked there all through lockdown in the cabin. Which was brilliant. It was her, because she had to work from home. And it was, initially she was under the stairs. She was like Harry Potter to start with. Yeah, she was under the stairs working. Yeah. And then she migrated to the cabin and just found it great.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? You need your own brain space. And it's sort of, it's a bit yo-yo like for me, that I need space to be able to get the thought to sort of stretch out. But if the wall is too close, you don't get to go as deep.
Do you move around working as well? Because
I do.
Yeah,
yes.
I do. Yeah. I find that helps
I sometimes told people that my beloved cat that I used to have, Teddy, he taught me this, because one week there would only be that sofa in the entire world, and the next week there would only be this armchair in the entire world. Yeah. And I find if I've either got different projects for different areas of the room,
okay, that's interesting,
or something like that, my mind is fooled into thinking that it's had a break when it goes from one project to the next. I mean, I do take lunch breaks, I do have breaks, but I do find that does something helpful. Yeah,
I just find, not necessarily for different projects, but just a change of environment. I find the change of environment really helps me, and it's not particular to any project. It's just sometimes I go to a cafe to work. Got a place where my son's working at the moment. Actually, it's called Baffle House. It's a brilliant cafe. It's like a bit of a biker's cafe, but fantastic cakes. And the coffee's great. So I go there to work sometimes. Name. Baffle House, yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah. It's really, really good. Or I go to Abergavenny, our local town, and find a cafe there with my laptop.
In previous years, I thought I couldn't work at home, and then lockdown happened, and I absolutely now need to work at home. But I'll take myself to cafes as a treat. I just don't want to get dependent again.
No, that's right. Yeah, I regard it as a treat a little bit, because I end up spending money on coffee and food.
Be rude not to.
Yeah, you have to. But also, I do. It's really weird. Sometimes I'll be struggling at home, and the day will end, and I'll think, oh, haven't done nearly enough as I should have done. And I beat myself up about that all the time.
So your should fairies, are they around? I did a piece called Shooting the Should Fairies in previous series. Are your should fairies around amount of productivity per time?
Yeah,
day?
Usually. Yeah. I mean, I rarely finish a day and think I did a good day's work then.
Can we just all take a moment for how much you've done and that thought is still there? I just think we all need to flag wave for this is human. It's got nothing to do with the amount of achievement, publication, production. I have always pointed out that when we get these shoulds in our head, they're always with terribly good intentions. It's always a case of wanting to do something well, but actually the thing... I don't think you've ever seen the Writer's Gym bookmark. You'll probably be in a goodie bag at Edgelit next week. But what we have here is the Writer's... Where you are now is the Writer's Gym. There may be 7 basic plots, but they're infamous original voices and getting everybody out there.
Good.
But one of... Everything about this is not writing specific. It's writing advice. Best writing advice is never about writing. And one of them is perfect was never on the menu.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. That's great. Yeah.
And the should fairies thing for me, that's why. Because yes, of course, it would be delightful to have, done these entirely finished things in a day. But actually, you've probably made one breakthrough. You've probably taken one authentic step in or maybe a lot more in the direction of where that should be going, where you want it to be going.
Yeah.
And that's real. Perfect's not real.
No, right. Even satisfied isn't very real sometimes for me. Finishing a day like today, I reading through a script I was working on this morning and into the afternoon. I went for a run lunchtime because I just needed to get out a little bit. But and I'm thinking to myself now, I should have finished that today, and I haven't. But going to you see, there he is.
Hi, Otis. Hello.
Otis. Good boy.
Otis. Hello.
Good boy.
What are the weird humans doing?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's a bit, what's going on? But I do find going to a cafe, it's really strange because you're amongst strangers and there's conversations going on. It's noisy. But I'd often go to a cafe for 2 hours and write 1,500 words. And that's a day's work for me. If I'm in the saddle on a project and I do 1,500 to 2,000 words, it's a really good day. And I rarely do that at home. It's really strange. And I just think when you're in a cafe, not only is there good coffee and cake, you just focus. You can't get up and walk around. I can't go and browse the bookshelves, or you can have a couple of drinks, but not many.
So you are wed to the environment. Yeah. It is essentially what I think heaven looks like. Is the right cafe to write in. So we talked about cafes and how that can get out of you more than what quite a lot of writing at home will get out of you, and I deeply sympathise. Are there any other habits or exercises or rituals that you'd want to give a shout out to?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I try and have a very casual morning routine, which is not get up and come and sit in front of the computer. I try and avoid looking at my phone or news, especially nowadays, or social media for at least half an hour or an hour in the morning. So I get up, have a cup of tea in the garden, get a bit of daylight, take the dog for a walk. Sort of 4 days out of 7, I take him for his morning walk. We got lovely woods near us, so we're in the woods every morning, and that just sets me up for the day. And that's about it, really. I've got no strict, I have to write with a certain pen, or I have to stop. Which writer was it? Says he writes 500 words a day, even if it's halfway through a sentence. I can't remember which writer that was. Might be Hemingway but no real strict, because I tend to work on several projects at a time as well. So at the moment I'm doing a tie-in novel that I can't talk about officially, and trying to work on my own novel as well, which is like something that's half finished. And I'm also doing an audio drama with Chris, collaborating on an audio drama. So there's 3 things going on. Oh, and the script that I'm still trying to work on. So
a minimum of 4.
And that's pretty standard. And I've got a list of short stories that I've got to write as well. So being someone who is scattershot in his work, I don't just focus on one novel. I don't just spend 4 months just writing a novel. I'll be doing other stuff at the same time. That makes having like strict habits or routines quite difficult, I think.
I feel like the thing I'm taking away from that, and it is something that I felt a great deal in your work and bio and reading you, is that it is about the joy. It is about finding how to enjoy the things, that the fact that we are working very, very hard at them. Yeah. The fact that they are hard work does not preclude them being extremely lovely to have and satisfying, that you are enjoying. What I'm trying to say is you're giving yourself the best chance of enjoying your work day.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing different projects helps that as well. If you're stuck in, the novel you're working on, you've always got the scripts that you can look at.
Because some days the brain will say, I know you thought you were doing that, but you're actually doing this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm probably not as strict as I should be with time. Chris is very good at, if I Zoom in for a chat or something, he says, right, I've got 2 hours on the novel this afternoon and then an hour on the script and then I'm going out. So he's quite regimented. But Chris writes loads of comics and stuff at the same time as well. I don't know how, I feel I'm busy sometimes, but compared to him, I'm really not.
I feel like most of us have a proper, not just writer, but a proper, there was that thing in The Guardian, I think it was years ago, saying that every 40-year-old felt like, they weren't real adult. The others were a real adult and they were just pretending. And I often think that about not just writing everything, but it sounds like Chris might be the sort of the proper one in your head.
Well, a little, but also I know, Chris and I, we talk about everything and we've both been through down times. We've both been through moments where we think, what am I going to do for the next paycheck? The vivid thing I remember about going full-time writing, delightful though it was and still is it was the first month of my life without a paycheck. It's like, holy shit, nobody's paid me this month. I've got to do this myself. Yeah. Everyone's got their own methods and processes. Chris has got a very busy family life. He's a grandfather now. We've both got busy family lives and busy hobbies and things. So we're forever talking to each other about how the hell am I going to finish this on time? And, just occasionally the deadlines zip by. But we do finish stuff on time and encourage each other on if we're getting a down moment.
And presumably communicate with whoever is on the other side of the deadline so they can give you another one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fairly good at hitting deadlines usually, but if I know it's not going to happen, I'll get in touch. And 99 times out of 100, people are lovely about it and gracious, unless it's scheduled in for publication. Even bigger publishers are generally okay with you overshooting by a month or two. I think they build it into their deadlines, to be honest.
And that's that one. Say the
thing. Yeah, right. Yeah.
As a deputy editor of Fangoria, when I was writing a horror article about, and it was something that was very close to me and close to her. It was an anti-Semitism in 1970s horror thing, and we were both feeling how much we wanted to get into this. And she was the one that first said, "Say the thing" to me. Was strip all of that away, abandon the perfect, go for what you can say, give it the space. And, it's such an important thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
Thank you so much, Tim Lebbon, for joining
Cheers,
the Writers'
It's been a pleasure, Rachel. Thanks for having me. It's been really good.
You've visited the Writers' Gym with author and coach, Dr Rachel Knightley. Production and sound design are by Ashley Lexine, and theme music is by Chris Gregory. To join a Writers' Gym workout online or in London, as a guest or as a member, visit writersgym.com or email thewritersgym@rachelknightley.com.